The media fixates on hypersonic missiles. This is a high-cost kinetic illusion. The real vector is silent, asymmetric, and aimed at systemic solvency. While manufactured rage bait consumes public attention, the primary battle space has shifted. It is now the deep ocean floor and low Earth orbit. RUSI reports confirm extensive adversarial investment in severing the subsea data cables that function as the central nervous system of the Western financial order. The parallel objective is satellite blinding, disabling the eyes of U.S. conventional dominance. This strategy does not seek to sink a carrier. It seeks to unplug it, creating the blind Leviathan, a hegemon with immense kinetic power rendered inert. This is why the flight to hard assets, reported as a simple dollar crisis, is an exodus from a digital system whose physical kill switches are now being targeted. The motive is not conquest, it is solvency. Forbes analysis declares a systemic dollar crisis, evidenced by a capital flight into hard assets like gold and silver. This is not a market fluctuation, it is a loss of faith in the underlying instrument. This systemic insolvency is the prime vulnerability, the strategic center of gravity for the entire Western system. Adversaries recognize this because they operate from a similar position of weakness. According to RUSI analysis, a protracted, symmetric war for Russia is a catastrophic domestic liability. The kinetic cost of matching NATO dollar for dollar would trigger internal collapse. An unpopular war bankrupts the state and dismantles the regime. This is a mathematical certainty. This weakness forces a pivot. When symmetric conflict is a pre-calculated loss, the only logical move is to change the battlefield. The strategy shifts from kinetic parity to asymmetric leverage. The objective is no longer to destroy an aircraft carrier with a missile, but to make that carrier's deployment an unsustainable economic liability for the system that fields it. The new blueprint is economic exhaustion. Low-cost, high-leverage vectors are deployed. These include weaponized information, rage bait, to fracture social cohesion, and calculated proxy entanglements from Venezuela to the Taiwan Strait to drain treasury reserves. Each manufactured crisis is an economic siege designed to force the hegemon to liquidate its remaining financial and political capital in a multi-front, low-intensity burn. The central pillar of U.S. global dominance, conventional military overmatch, has become its primary systemic liability. The math is irrefutable. Analyses from institutions like the Royal United Services Institute, or RUSI, detail the asymmetric cost-exchange ratio now defining modern conflict. A $5 million main battle tank can be located, tracked, and kinetically liquidated by a $500 first-person view drone. This is not a balanced fight. It is an economic execution. This dynamic is known as the democratization of violence, the migration of state-level lethal capability down to non-state actors and individuals at a trivial cost. Every high-cost asset deployed, a carrier, a fighter jet, an armored column, is no longer a projection of power. It is a multi-billion-dollar liability, a target waiting for a low-cost solution. Adversaries are not trying to match U.S. spending. They are using this economic imbalance as a vector to bankrupt the system, forcing a choice between withdrawal or a desperate, launch-on-warning escalation. The regional instability you are being shown is not the cause of global tension. It is the effect. These are not sovereign crises. They are proxy laboratories. CSIS designates these gray zones, from the resource-rich sectors of South Africa to the logistic choke points of North America, as staging grounds. This is where the low-cost blueprint for systemic collapse is being tested and refined. The primary accelerant is information warfare, weaponized under the term rage bait. As noted in reports on Elon Musk's platform overhaul, this vector is designed to fracture social cohesion at near-zero kinetic cost. The goal is to induce internal paralysis, turning a nation's population into a liability. It primes the target for the next phase of the protocol. Simultaneously, adversaries leverage proxy entanglements. Freight news reports draw a direct line between seemingly disconnected events, such as a potential capture of the Venezuelan president and heightened risks in the Taiwan Strait. This isn't a coincidence. It's a feature. The blueprint is to create multiple, geographically disparate dilemmas to stretch and exhaust the hegemon's high-cost conventional forces. These asymmetric vectors are only effective because of the West's systemic insolvency. As Forbes reports, the flight from the dollar into hard assets like gold and silver is not a market trend. It's a declaration of a solvency crisis. Adversaries understand the U.S. security umbrella is no longer a deterrent, but a massive, unfunded liability. They are not preparing for symmetric war. They are exploiting a mathematical certainty. The endgame of this blueprint is not to defeat U.S. carrier groups in open combat. It is to use these low-cost gray zone provocations to force the declining hegemon into a zero-sum choice. With its financial system insolvent and its population divided, it must either accept systemic collapse or initiate a kinetic first strike to reset the board. That is the trap. The final escalation vector is not a hypersonic missile. It is a line of code. The core vulnerability is a Cold War protocol known as Launch on Warning. As documented by strategic analysts at RUSI and CSIS, the doctrine is a mathematical necessity. If satellite and radar networks detect a mass incoming nuclear launch, the target nation must launch its own arsenal before the incoming warheads can destroy its silos and submarines. To wait for impact is to guarantee decapitation. This protocol is now a systemic liability. Adversaries understand that the kinetic cost of challenging U.S. conventional dominance is prohibitive. The asymmetric alternative is to attack the decision-making process itself. A sophisticated cyber attack does not need to kinetically disable a single missile. It only needs to blind the early warning system. This creates the fog of digital war. The commander in the bunker sees screens indicating a full-scale launch. Simultaneously, corroborating data streams from satellite uplinks and radar arrays go dark. Are the sensors malfunctioning? Is it a spoof? Or is it a real attack, perfectly timed with a cyber-blinding component? The doctrine provides no room for ambiguity. The commander is forced into a zero-sum choice. Wait for confirmation that may never come, and risk the complete annihilation of their retaliatory capability. Or execute the launch protocol out of fear, based on potentially compromised data. This is the blueprint's endgame, leveraging low-cost digital vectors to force the declining hegemon to initiate a high-cost kinetic event, making it the agent of its own systemic collapse. The blueprint requires a final data point, the system's breaking strain. Adversaries understand the U.S. conventional military is a high-cost, low-return liability in a solvency crisis. The flight to hard assets, as documented by Forbes, is not just a market signal, it is a targeting metric. The focus on rage bait on information platforms is a calculated distraction from the true vector. A symmetric conflict is illogical. The protocol calls for a calibration shot first. Analysts at CSIS project. The next phase is a non-kinetic probe to test the fragility of the U.S. response doctrine. Within 12 months, expect a coordinated, attribution-impossible blackout targeting a critical logistics and data nexus, specifically the simultaneous failure of a Tier 1 U.S. West Coast port's automated container cranes and the fiber optic landing station that services it. It will be presented as a catastrophic infrastructure failure, not an attack. The objective is not physical destruction, but to trigger a localized liquidity crisis and measure the exact political and financial reaction time. It is the final measurement before the primary event.